Franz Kafka, a lawyer, clerk, and one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. He wrote in German, but his heart belonged to Prague. As a German-speaking Jew in a Czech Catholic city, his relationship with Prague was conflicted. He was famously quoted as saying of the city's allure, "Prague never lets you go. This dear little mother has sharp claws." As evidenced by the streets, squares, and plaques, not to mention institutions such as the Franz Kafka Museum, the city is less ambivalent about its native son. Reminders of Kafka's life can be found all over Prague. The city doesn't want people to forget about him.
Welcome to my world, the world of Franz Kafka. Open your mind.
Franz Kafka is the most famous Czech writer, full of paradoxes and contrasts. He was raised by a tyrannical father in a complicated time, which was reflected in his feelings and work. Writing was at the center of Kafka's life, but rather than fulfillment, it brought him ceaseless discontent. Brief periods of euphoria and productivity were followed by incredible self-critical doubt about everything he wrote. Although his evening and nocturnal scribblings were his one desire, he published only sporadically during his life. He ordered all his writings to be burned on his death, and were it not for his lifelong friend Max Brod, who defied his wish, Kafka would be largely unknown today. The way Kafka portrays his city is one of the most mysterious practices of modern literature. In his short stories, he doesn't articulate the presence of Prague, but it is of course an unspecified background figure throughout all his work. He was very much associated with Prague, and he is very much a writer that absorbs the Prague atmosphere and refashions it in his own work without calling it by its name. We are very much aware of the Prague atmosphere, the alleyways, the confusion, the complexity, the history of the sites and the context of the city. In his writing, Kafka transforms Prague into an imaginary topography. The city takes a step back and is no longer recognizable by its buildings, bridges, and monuments. It is no longer important to identify a particular office, primary or secondary school, university, church, or castle, as these structures function in the role of metaphors and allegorical places. It is generally understood that the anonymous cathedral in the trial is none other than St. Vitus Cathedral, and that the path taken by Joseph Gay in the last chapter of the same book goes from the Old Town across Charles Bridge to the outer limits of the lesser town. Franz Kafka placed his stories in a world we know, but sudden completely illogical elements always arose. This way of writing enabled him to show people the otherwise inexplicable phenomena of his mind, society, and universe. Perhaps the story that most captures Kafka's world is The Judgment. The central character, Georg, is writing to a friend abroad to tell him he is going to be married. He tells his alien father about the letter, and in a gradual and deeply unnerving way, the whole story is turned on its head. His father suddenly turns against him, accuses him of betraying his friend and the memory of his mother, and in a frightening climax, the father tells the son, "I sentence you to death by drowning." While Kafka's works are open to numerous interpretations, his characters cannot communicate with others and find themselves consumed by anguish in absurd situations they cannot control. Protagonists, who are victims, hopelessly search for their own identity, a sense of security and purpose. Dual life between office and writing that he was forced to lead, the office was a difficult obstacle to his own life task, which for him was writing. This contradiction was even more urgent as he found the bureaucracy to be his stable form of life, whereas writing never ceased to be a permanent source of existential insecurity for him. Kafkaesque is common vernacular in literary circles. The word Kafkaesque is often applied to bizarre and impersonal administrative situations where the individual feels powerless to understand or control what is happening. Today, curious visitors to Prague can easily discover that Kafka spent nearly his entire life within the span of a few blocks of the city. Needless to say, his legacy traveled much farther.